I stood in the living room of Elaine's house. The air was still heavy with the scent of funeral flowers. The emptiness was suffocating, a stark reminder of our loss. "Elaine," I whispered, touching the cold railing of the bed where I had spent countless nights caring for her. My mind was a whirlpool of memories, each one a fragment of the time we shared. Suddenly, Eric's voice shattered the silence. "Move, Anna apipidtwe." "You're in the way," he barked, his tone harsh and devoid of any warmth. Startled, I turned to see him marching towards me, gripping a suitcase, my suitcase, with a ferocity that made my heart sink. "What are you doing?" I cried out as he flung it out of the window, my belongings scattering in the yard like fallen leaves. My confusion quickly turned to horror as he continued his rampage, tossing out my shoes, my coats, everything that represented my life here. "Stop it! What on earth are you doing?" "Ainsi apprentictions," I screamed, my voice breaking with disbelief. Eric looked at me, his eyes cold and unyielding. "With Elaine gone, you're useless." "Get out," he spat, his words cutting through me like a knife. I felt a chilling emptiness at his betrayal, a void where our love used to be. I said, my voice steadied despite the turmoil inside me. "Let's get divorced. I'll take my things out myself, so stop throwing them." "Hetz Korsten," he sneered. "Good and Chikritz, write the divorce papers now," tossing a half-filled divorce form on the table. His preparedness for this moment sent a shiver down my spine. Insolently, I filled it out. "All right, I'm going to file this," I said, my voice hollow. "Clean up the house while I'm gone," he ordered, not even glancing back as he left. Alone in the room, surrounded by the debris of my shattered life, I realized I was standing at the crossroads of my future. "Konda to your cult. I'm Anna, 48 years old, and suddenly single. Now we live a modest life in a small town, a stark contrast to the chaos I just left behind. Looking back, I wonder if the peaceful life I lead now is just a dream, an escape from the nightmare I endured with Eric. Teens back in our 20s, Eric and I were just colleagues in the same department, fresh and eager at our jobs. Our interactions were professional, sprinkled with occasional office banter. So Eason for in the Clarksons, I remember him as someone always tied up with his girlfriend from college, while I was the one passionate about climbing the career ladder. But everything changed when we both turned 29. It was after a year-end party that Eric asked to talk to me alone. We walked to a park near the station, the winter air biting at our faces, and tried to lighten the mood. "What's up? But you're not going to complain about extra work again, are you?" I joked, recalling the many times he'd asked for my help. "No, it's not about work today," Eric said, his voice uncharacteristically serious. "Anna, will you consider dating me with marriage in mind?" Marriage? That's with me?" I was taken aback. "What about your girlfriend?" "We broke up a while ago, so what do you think?" "I'm serious," he pressed, his eyes searching mine. I was surprised, yes, but also secretly thrilled. Despite having no romantic notions before, I found myself saying I'd be happy to. We married within a year. Our courtship was a whirlwind, brief but intense. I planned to continue working, but Eric had other ideas. "I'm terrible at housework. I want you to stay home after we're married," he insisted. And just like that, my career ended. Not with a bang, but with a silent nod from a boss who believed women belonged at home. Then came the pregnancy, a brief flicker of hope, but it was not to be. I lost the baby in the 4th month. That day, lying in the hospital, clutching the maternity book I'd received just weeks before, I called Eric. His voice, confused yet reassuring over the phone, was the last strand of our connection that felt real. After the miscarriage, we tried for years to conceive again, but to no avail. Eric's interest seemed to wane with each passing month, his late returns from work becoming more frequent. The distance between us grew, filling the house with a silent tension that was almost suffocating. Our marriage had become a facade, a hollow shell of what it once was. The once warm glances turned cold and conversations became transactional. Eric's disinterest was like a slow poison, eroding what little hope I clung to. The turning point came on a grim evening when I confronted him about our fading relationship. "Eric, we need to talk about us, about trying for a baby again," I said, my voice barely above a whip. He barely glanced up from his phone. "Do we really need a kid, Anna?" "I think we're fine as we are," he muttered, his indifference slicing through my heart. I felt a surge of anger. "What do you mean by that?" "You know how much this means to me," he shrugged. "I just don't see the point anymore." His words stung like a slap. It was then I realized our dreams and hopes were no longer intertwined. In the following weeks, the divide only deepened. Eric's late nights became more frequent, and our conversations dwindled to nothing. I was left alone with my thoughts, my worries multiplying like shadows in the dark. Was he seeing someone else? The suspicion ate at me, gnawing away at the remnants of trust. Then came the day that broke whatever was left of us. I had scheduled an appointment for fertility treatment, a faint glimmer of hope in our otherwise bleak situation. Remember, we have that appointment at the doctor's today, I reminded him one morning. He didn't even look up from his breakfast. Can't make it. Work's too busy, he said nonchalantly, as if he hadn't just crushed my last bit of hope. I remember staring at him, disbelief and anger swirling inside me. You're choosing work over our last chance to have a family. Eric didn't respond, just left the house, leaving me standing in a silence that was almost suffocating. It was then I knew our marriage was beyond repair. The dreams of a family, of growing old together, had faded into a distant memory, replaced by a stark, painful reality. Our home was no longer a sanctuary, but a prison of broken promises and unspoken regrets. As the days turned to months, I found myself drifting through life, a ghost in my own existence. The vibrant woman I once was had been eroded away by years of neglect and broken dreams. Eric and I were nothing more than strangers living under the same roof, bound by a marriage that had lost all meaning. The monotony of our strained existence was shattered the day I received the call about Elaine's accident. The news hit like a tidal wave, leaving me gasping for air in its wake. She had been in a severe accident and her condition was critical. Rushing to the hospital, I found Elaine, once vibrant and full of life, now confined to a bed, her body a map of bruises and bandages. The doctors explained her condition, a severe head injury leading to paralysis. She'll need full-time care, they said, their words echoing in the sterile hospital room. I remember calling Eric, expecting him to share the burden, to step up as her son. Elaine needs us now. She requires constant care, I said, my voice shaking with emotion. His response was like a cold wind. I have work, Anna. I can't be bothered with this. You handle it, he said, his voice void of any concern. That moment crystallized everything that was wrong with our marriage. His mother, his own flesh and blood, lay helpless, and all he could think about was himself. I felt a surge of disgust, not just for the man he had become, but for the time I had wasted hoping he would change. Taking on the role of caregiver, I dedicated myself to Elaine's care. The days were long and the nights even longer. Each morning, I woke up with a heavy heart, knowing that the day would bring no respite from the relentless routine of care. Yet, in those quiet moments, tending to Elaine, I found a sense of purpose that had been missing from my life for so long. Eric's visits were rare and brief, his discomfort palpable each time he stepped into Elaine's room. How much longer will this go on? He would ask, his voice tinged with annoyance rather than concern. I watched as the man I once loved, the man I had shared my dreams with, turned into a stranger, his heart hardened by selfishness and neglect. And as the days turned into months, and then years, I realized that my loyalty was no longer to Eric, but to the woman who had become more of a mother to me than he ever was a husband. The day Elaine passed away marked the end of an era, but also the beginning of my liberation. The funeral was a somber affair, Eric's presence like a dark cloud overshadowing the grief. It wasn't long after that the true nature of his venom became apparent, with the disgraceful eviction and our swift divorce. But life, in all its silence, was louder than any argument. It seems life had a twist in store for Eric. A few days later, he called me, his voice filled with fury. "Annie, you've swindled my mother," he accused. Puzzled, I met him at the lawyer's office where we were to discuss Elaine's will. The lawyer, a stoic man, read out the contents. Back to my astonishment, Elaine had left everything to me. Her estate, her memories, her gratitude. She had written that I was more of a daughter to her than Eric ever was a son. I'm her son, for God's sake. Why does she leave everything to you? Eric raged, his face contorted in anger. I looked at him. The man I once vowed to spend my life with, known nothing more than a greedy stranger. Maybe because she knew who truly cared for her, I replied, my voice steady. The lawyer intervened, suggesting Eric accept the will as it was, but Eric was relentless, his greed overshadowing any semblance of decency. That's when I played my final card. I'll overlook your infidelity if you agree to the will as is, I said calmly, watching as his face turned pale. I've never cheated, he stammered, but his eyes couldn't hide the truth. Your choice, Eric. The will or scandal, I said, my voice unwavering. Defeated, Eric agreed to the terms of the will, his arrogance crumbling under the weight of his own guilt. In the days that followed, I moved into my new home, the old house Elaine left me. I found solace in its walls, each room echoing with memories of a woman who had shown me more kindness than my own husband. Word soon reached me about Eric's downfall. His affair had come to light, his mistress's husband suing him for damages. Rumors swirled about his financial ruin and disappearance. As I stood in my garden, the sun setting on the horizon, I realized that this was the life I was meant to live, free from the chains of a loveless marriage. I found peace in the quiet simplicity of my existence. My heart, once burdened with sorrow and disappointment, now beat with the promise of a new beginning. Elaine's gift had not just been her estate, but a chance to rediscover myself and live a life filled with genuine love and purpose.